Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Dear students, hope you are doing great and having wonderful Ramadan. This is the first lecture, online lecture for the MIS IE 401, which is the course for the final year students of Industrial Engineering Department. So in this course, we have started Python, which is one of the most powerful languages in the world and used extensively for the management information systems as well as the data science and data analytics. So, in today's lecture, we will be talking about the tuples, and in the coming lectures, I will be telling you the details about the course progression and the other topics we will be discussing on. So, for the tuples, in this lecture, we will be teaching you how to index the tuple, how to slice the tuple, and how to sort a tuple. So, first of all, going to the table contents, which I have already discussed with you guys, indexing, slicing and sorting, and the quiz on the tuple is on the online platform, which you guys are already enrolled for the online certification, which is available for free of cost in the IBM Cognitive Classroom. So this is IBM Cognitive Classroom, which is the main source of the learning for this certification. So about the data set which is available on the online labs, but we will not be covering these data sets in this lecture, so don't worry about this. Once this data set is used in the coming lectures, then I will explain to you guys in the later videos. So in Python, like coming to the tuples, what are the tuples? It's also pronounced as the tuples, so it's up to you. In Python there are different data types: string, integer and float. These data types can be contained in a tuple as follow. So you can have all these data types in a one tuple. Previously we only had to store like 10, 1.2, 10 is an integer and 1.2 is a float, and here the disco in the columns are the string. So now we can combine the three data types into the one data type, which is also known as the tuple. So tuple, when we created, the static store shows here the number sign shows the comment for the programmer, and it doesn't execute in the program. So tuple 1 is equals to parenthesis disco comma 10 comma 1.2, and if I enter tuple 1, it will give me disco 10 and 1.2. Can you recall where I'm going to enter this? So it can be entered in two places. First of all, in the IBM Python labs, from where the presentation material is also taken, and secondly, I have I have taught you guys how to install the Anaconda Python, and from there you can open the Jupyter notebook and run your code. So this is basically I've run the code and I got the output. So I want to know the type of the variable. The type of variable is tuple, but how can I get this using the Python shell or Python lab? If you don't know the type, you just type it like type tuple 1 and it will give you the type, which is tuple. What does it mean? That you can store the string, and you can store the integer, and you can store the float in the tuple variable. Now we are moving towards the indexing, how we will be indexing each element within a tuple. For example, each element of a tuple can be accessed via an index. The following table represents the relationship between the index and the items in the tuple. Each name of the tuple followed by a square bracket with the index number. So for example, in my tuple 1, there are 3 elements, and by convention all the programming languages take the first element as 0. So the indexing starts from 0. On the 0 index I have disco, on the 1 I have 10, and on the 2 I have 1.2. So we can print out each element in a tuple as well. For example, tuple 1, and within square bracket 0, I am referring to this disco. So it will print me disco, then print tuple 1 1. In 1 I have an integer which is 10, and tuple 1 2, which is 1.2. So it will print me out disco 10 and 1.2. Previously, I just wrote tuple 1, or I could write tuple 1. It will print disco 10 1.2 in a consecutive order. Now I am referring each element of the tuple independently, so it gives me more power and strength and capability to refer to the individual element for a particular use in the program. So like print type of tuple 1 0. So what was the type? It was string for the disco, integer for 10, and float for 1.2. We can also use negative indexing. We use the same table for the corresponding values. So negative indexing can also be used, and by default the last element is assigned a value of -1, which means that it's the last in the tuple, and -2 for the 10, and -3 for the disco. So why we are using the reverse indexing? It is used in the loops or in the higher programs when you don't know the specific length entered by the user. Maybe the user type 10, or maybe the user type 1 million. So whatever the length is, you'd call in the in your loops or in your program that correspond to the last element, and very easily you can pick the last element by -1. So if you write tuple -1, it will give you -2. It shows that 1.2 is the last element in my tuple. Now concatenate tuples. What is concatenation? We can concatenate or combine tuples by using plus sign. This is simply the combination of two or more than two tuples. So we will create tuple 2, which is the combination of tuple 1. What was the tuple 1? It was disco, 10, and 1.2, but now plus parenthesis hard rock and 10. So it will create or add these values to tuple 2, and it will like add tuple 1 plus these two values, so that it will be disco, 10, 1.2, hard rock, and 10. So this is my new tuple. So what are the, we can slice tuples obtaining multiple values as demonstrated in the figure below. For 0, now the indexing is changed. Starting from 0 it is disco, 10 is 1, 1.2 is 2. It was previous, but now we have 3, which is hard rock, and 4, which is 10. So tuple 2 and slicing 3 to 5, so it will give us hard rock and 10. 3, which is the first element, and 5 is you cannot see 5 here, but what's the rule for slicing? You write the last element as n.1. so if you need to have 3 and 4, you will write n plus 1, which is 4 plus 1, 5. So 3 is included, 5 is not included, so it will give you hard rock and 10. So slicing tuple 0, 0, 3, which is disco, 10, and 3. Last two elements 3 and 5, tuple 2, 3, and 5, which is hard rock and 10. But also this is just a question in the within the lecture, that how can I get the last element of the tuple? So you can think on it and write it as your own code. It's not a quiz, but kind of a quiz. Just think on it. We have discussed, just giving you a hint, it can be accessed using -1. Now what's the length of the tuple? I want to get the length. So in Python you just write len, which is len, and parenthesis tuple 2. It will give you 5, which is the length of the tuple. Again, how it's 5? It's 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. But in Python the indexing starts from 0, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So sorting, we will be covering the sorting in other lectures in the part 2 of this series. For now, thank you for watching. Thank you, and see you in the next series of the tuple.